We all know that growth is an irreversible and a unique characteristic feature of all the life forms that is existing in Earth. This growth is influenced by the environment. So when we talk about the environment, a bacterial cell is adapted to different types of the environment, and therefore the bacteria shows different type of responses. The responses that can be shown by the bacteria to the environment depends on the environment, that is on the environmental factors, and also on the genetic makeup of the bacteria. Now the viability is one of the expression of the bacteria. Why viability? Because all the bacteria do not remain viable in all the types of environment. So it depends upon the environment whether the cell will remain viable or it will be non-viable. There is another term we use for the bacteria which is called VBNC, because all the bacteria which is viable need not be culturable. That means if the cell is viable, they need not be able to divide or reproduce, which is an essential function of growth. Another thing we talk about is growth. That means the viable cells need not grow. They may be non-culturable, and we use the term VBNC. The bacteria also respond to the environment by means of differentiation. That means the bacteria is able to mature, and when the bacteria matures, it undergoes the process of reproduction. That means the differentiation process, a young cells become a mature cell. And finally, the bacteria goes the process of reproduction. And we all know that bacteria undergoes the process of binary fission, which is a unique and a specialized feature of the bacteria. And because of this only, the bacteria confers the property of immortality, because the bacterial cell which is born is not the one which is going to die. Basically, we divide it into two different categories. One is called the physical factors, which takes into account the changes in pH, temperature, the osmotic pressure, the presence of salt or the sugars in the surrounding. And then we talk about the chemical factors, which take into account the source of carbon, the source of nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, or any other trace elements. Temperature is one of the very important physical factor that decides the fate of the bacterial cell. When I say fate, that means the cell may be viable, the cell may be non-viable. When the cell is viable, it will multiply. It may happen that the cell is viable, but it will not multiply. And this is decided upon the temperature also. Because if the temperature is too cold, the bacteria may not reproduce. If the temperature is too hot, then also the bacteria may not reproduce. So what we need is, we need an optimum temperature where the bacteria will feel comfortable, and as a result the bacteria will grow. Okay. So when we talk about temperature, basically there are three different temperatures that we come across. One is called the minimum temperature. Now minimum temperature is the temperature after which we see no growth of the bacteria. Then we come across an optimum temperature. This is the exact favorable temperature that is required by the bacterial cells to grow. And therefore, at optimum temperature, we find the growth is rapid and it is much more in comparison to the other temperatures. Then we come across another temperature, or another term rather, which is called the maximum temperature. That means up to this temperature, the bacteria can reproduce, and after this temperature, the bacteria is not able to reproduce at all. That means the rate of growth totally falls after the maximum temperature. Now, if I take into account all the three temperatures, the minimum temperature, the optimum temperature, and the maximum temperature, these three temperatures together forms the cardinal temperature of the bacteria. Okay, so in cardinal temperature, we find that we have a minimum temperature at which we say that transport processes are very slow. That means if the nutrients are not able to be transported across the membrane, the bacteria doesn't get the food, doesn't get the nutrients, and therefore the bacteria is not able to reproduce, the bacteria is not able to differentiate, the bacteria is not able to grow, mature, and therefore does not undergo the process of reproduction. So if we increase the temperature, we find that the rate of growth increases until it reaches a temperature which is called the optimum temperature, where the enzymatic reactions occur at a maximum possible rate. Now, this maximum possible rate also depends upon the genetic makeup. If the bacteria has got the genetic makeup of reproducing, say, 20 minutes, or if it has got a generation time of 20 minutes, then maximum is 20 minutes. It cannot reproduce taking a lesser amount of time, say 12 or 10 minutes. No, because that is the genetic makeup. And then this is the temperature which is called the optimum temperature, which is the most favorable temperature for the bacterial cells to grow. And after this optimum temperature, again it goes down. That means the rate of growth goes down and it reaches a temperature which is called the maximum temperature. That means after this temperature, the bacteria will not reproduce at all, because at this temperature, all the proteins denature. There is collapse of the cytoplasmic membrane, which we refer to as the thermal lysis. So these three temperatures, that is your minimum, optimum and maximum temperature, takes into account a temperature which is called the cardinal temperature. Therefore, we say that cardinal temperature of each of the bacteria which belongs to different genus is different, and that also depends upon the environment where it is growing or reproducing.
Ma'am, why is the optimum temperature more towards the maximum temperature?
Okay, this optimum temperature which we refer to is always closer to the maximum, because the optimum temperature is the one where the enzymes are functioning. Now, enzymes are there, they are functioning a metabolically active phase. And suddenly, if you keep on increasing the temperature, what happens? After a certain temperature, the conformation of the enzymes, which are basically the protein, they changes. So, they denature and suddenly they stop their reaction. But when you increase the temperature, the enzymes are not getting inactivated. Rather, they are getting the energy, they are getting the temperature and they are getting activated. And therefore, this optimum temperature is always near the maximum temperature. Now, depending on the temperature of the surrounding, the microorganisms have been categorized into different categories. The first group we come across is called the psychrophiles. The word psychro means cold and philes we all know means loving. That means they are basically the bacteria who are cold loving bacteria. A very common example is there are many species of Pseudomonas which are psychrophiles. There is another category which is called cyclotrophs or cyclotolerant. These are the bacteria which are able to tolerate the cold temperature. That means they are not cold loving, but they can tolerate it. They have the gene, they have certain enzymes by which they can tolerate that cold temperature. A common example is Campylobacter. Then we have another category which is called the thermophiles. Thermos means the high temperature. Okay, thermophiles and then the hyperthermophiles. Hyper means much higher temperature. So these two category of bacteria are the one which are able to survive at a higher temperature. Okay, so a very common example is Thermophilus aquaticus, from where we are able to isolate one enzyme. Could you tell me the name of that enzyme? Thermophilus aquaticus, Taq polymerase, exactly. So Taq polymerase is such a polymerase which helps in the amplification of the DNA at a high temperature, and that is why we have isolated this Taq polymerase from Thermophilus aquaticus. So it's the economic importance of the bacteria. The other category is called the mesophiles. The mesophile means they are able to tolerate a moderate or an optimum temperature which is about from 25 or 27 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees Celsius, which is not too high and not too cold. Now, coming on to the rate of growth, if you look into this diagram where we have shown the rate of growth on the y-axis and the temperature on the x-axis, then we find that psychrophiles, which are the cold-loving bacteria, they have an optimum temperature which is a little more than -10, and the optimum temperature of this is about 12 degrees Celsius. Rather, in comparison to the one which is cyclotrophs or the one which are able to tolerate the cold temperature, their optimum temperature is about a little more than 20, which is 22 degree. However, in the case of mesophiles, this is 37 degree, 35 to 37. So, you see the optimum temperature of the all the group of bacteria, whether it's psychrophiles, cyclotrophs, mesophiles, thermophiles, and then hyperthermophiles. Here you can see the hyperthermophiles, they are able to show an optimum temperature which is round about 95 to 97 degrees Celsius. So they have got such enzyme system which is able to work still if you keep on increasing the temperature. So this is how we can show that cardinal temperature, the minimum, the optimum and the maximum temperature, they keep on changing depending upon the temperature, not only depending upon the temperature but also on the genetic makeup of the microorganism.
Ma'am, what type of structural adaptations thermophiles or hyperthermophiles have?
Okay, now thermophiles and hyperthermophiles, we all know they grow at an extreme temperature, therefore they are called extremophiles. The first adaptation they have got is they have got high amount of GC ratio. Now GC ratio means between G and C there is presence of triple bond. So they are much stronger. And if you go to the cell wall of these bacteria, we find that their cell wall is much more rigid. And therefore they are able to survive in extreme conditions. If you take the cell membrane, they do not have the phosphobilipid cell membrane. They have got a monolayer. So if it's a monolayer, you do not have that fluidity in the membrane. As a result, they are able to survive. Moreover, another unique system they have got is they have got presence of reverse DNA gyrase. Reverse DNA gyrase means an enzyme which helps in the unfolding of the DNA, because DNA gyrase is a normal enzyme found in the mesophiles where we see it helps in the unfolding of the DNA, which helps during the replication process. But if they have the reverse DNA gyrase, what happens? The DNA does not unfold. It remains in its position. So these are the adaptations seen in the case of thermophiles and hyperthermophiles. The second physical factor upon which the rate of bacterial growth depends on is oxygen. Now, oxygen can be utilized by the microorganism, and we call them as aerobes, who utilize the oxygen via the process of respiration. And those which are not able to utilize the oxygen, they are categorized as anaerobes. So basically we have aerobes or anaerobes, which are the two categories of the bacteria. Now the aerobes, a very common example we come across is Bacillus subtilis, and there is another category of the bacteria which is called microaerophils. Now microaerophils are those bacteria which need oxygen but in a very small amount. An example is Treponema pallidum, which is a causal organism of syphilis. Then we have another category, anaerobes. A common example is Clostridium tetani, which is the causal organism of tetanus. This Clostridium tetani is a strict anaerobe. That means it can reproduce in anaerobic condition in the absence of oxygen. And therefore, we say that whenever we have a cut or a wound, it should be immediately washed off, because the sand or the dust particle cover that wound, gives the anaerobic environment, and therefore Clostridium is able to reproduce and produce the toxin, and therefore the person can suffer from tetanus. Another category is called aerotolerant bacteria. These bacteria are basically anaerobes, but they can tolerate oxygen in a very small amount. That is why they are called aerotolerant bacteria. Then we have facultative anaerobes. A common example is E. coli. That means they are not disturbed by the presence or the absence of oxygen. So they don't need exactly oxygen, but it does not harm any cost to their metabolic process even if the oxygen is present. Okay, that is why they are called facultative. Now, if we wish to see the bacterial growth, we commonly perform an experiment with the help of this thioglycolate broth. Now, thioglycolate, if added to the media, or if we prepare this thioglycolate broth, what happens is you have presence of oxygen in this upper layer while you have the deficiency of oxygen in the lower layer. So we say this is minus oxygen and this is plus oxygen. If the bacterial growth takes place in such a way that you have less number of cells in this oxygen layer and more number of cells in the layer where there is absence of oxygen, then we say that this bacteria is an aerobe which requires oxygen but in a very low concentration. However, if the growth takes place in such a way that the cells are only localized in the oxygenic area, then we say it is an aerobe which requires oxygen. That means these bacteria are not able to survive in the absence of oxygen. They are strictly aerobes. Then we have another category where we see that the bacterial cells are found uniformly. That means they are insensitive of oxygen. They do not need it, or the oxygen is not causing any harm to their growth. Another category we come across is we find the growth of bacterial cell only at the bottom. That means they are strictly anaerobes. They do not require oxygen at all. Now, coming on to another experiment which we normally perform with the help of nutrient broth only, where we do not use any thioglycolate. Here we see that concentration of oxygen is high at this level. But if you go down, the concentration of oxygen becomes lesser and lesser, and it is lowest at the end or at the bottom. So if the growth is there in the upper part, then we call it as a obligate aerobe. That means they are strictly aerobes. They grow only in the presence of oxygen. Then we have obligate anaerobes. That means they do not require oxygen at all. They are very sensitive of oxygen. So they are obligate aerobes or strictly anaerobes. Then we have facultative anaerobes. That means they are insensitive. They can grow anywhere. And we have aerotolerant anaerobes. That means they can grow in the presence of oxygen. They can tolerate the presence of oxygen.
Ma'am, can we replace the term anaerobic with microaerophilic?
No, we cannot replace the anaerobes with microaerophils because microaerophils are basically aerobes.
Okay.
They require oxygen. It's a necessity for them, though they require in a very small amount, but they need it. But anaerobes are the one which do not require oxygen. The facultative are insensitive, but basically they do not need oxygen. But the microaerophils need the presence of oxygen. Now, in some cases, we find that the oxygen becomes toxic, and that is why they are not able to survive. For example, in the case of obligate anaerobes, the oxygen in such organism becomes very toxic because oxygen is split down by flavoprotein, which is present inside the cell, into many toxic forms. The toxic forms can be production of superoxide radicals, which is the most toxic form. Then we have hydroxyl radical, we have formation of singlet oxygen, or we may have production of the peroxide ion, or peroxide form. So these are the toxic form of oxygen that are formed inside the cell. Now what happens in the case of aerobes is they show presence of catalase. Now this enzyme helps in the conversion, or rather we say that two peroxide molecules combine together to form water and oxygen, and therefore they get rid of the peroxide. Then we have presence of peroxidase, which with the help of this reducing power NADH converts the H2O2 or hydrogen peroxide into water. Then we have presence of another enzyme called superoxide dismutase, which again converts the singlet oxygen into peroxide, and this peroxide goes over here with the help of catalase is converted to water. So ultimately everything is being converted to a product which is not harmful for the cell. So if any organism shows the presence of catalase, peroxidase, superoxide dismutase all together, then what we find is the toxic oxygen radicals which are being formed can be converted to water and oxygen, and therefore they do not cause any harm to the cell. While the anaerobes do not show the presence of these enzymes, and therefore they become sensitive to the oxygen. Coming on to the third physical factor that again decides the rate of growth of bacteria is the pH of the surrounding media. Now, depending upon the pH of the media, the different type of microorganisms that we come across are acidophiles, which are able to grow at a pH which is less than 5.5. A very common example is Thiobacillus ferrooxidans. Then there is a type of bacteria which is able to grow at a neutral pH known as neutrophiles. Example is your E. coli. Then we have another category of bacteria which is called alkalophiles, which are able to grow at a pH which is alkaline, around about 8.5 to 11.5. A common example is your Nitrobacter. So depending upon the pH, they have been categorized into different category. Now we normally see the pathogens are there which show a very slow growth at a pH which is below 4.6. That means we normally do not find the pathogens which are growing at an acidic pH. Though there are many which may grow an acidic pH and cause the disease. For example, those which are causing the spoilage of the food. They are producing toxins. For example, Clostridium botulinum. If I see, a very common example is Clostridium perfringens, which is the causal organism of gas gangrene, which is chewing up the muscles of the eukaryotic cells or the host cells. Now what happens? Their optimum pH is 7.2, though they can survive at a minimum and maximum pH. So they have a wide range of pH at which they can survive, and they can reproduce also. Coming on to another example, which is Clostridium botulinum toxin. The toxin production is seen to be at a very acidic pH. Then we have Clostridium botulinum growth. Again, the growth can take place at an acidic pH. The growth can take place at an alkaline pH, but no growth and toxin production is seen at the neutral pH. So this is how it also depends upon the pathogen, that which type of pathogen is there and what is the tissue on which they are going to cause the disease. And they may give out different type of toxins depending upon the pH. The fourth physical factor upon which the rate of the bacterial growth depends on is your hydrostatic and the osmotic pressure. Now there are certain bacteria which are able to tolerate a pressure of 600 to 1100 atmospheric pressure. This is normally found in the deep sea, where the temperature is again too less, around about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. Such bacteria are called the baro-tolerant bacteria. However, there are many bacteria which are able to tolerate different osmotic pressures, and depending on the presence of the NaCl, that is sodium chloride, they have been categorized into different categories. They can be mild halophiles, moderate halophiles, extreme halophiles, or they can be osmophoids. That means those bacteria which are able to tolerate at a high concentration of sugar. Then we have presence of xerophiles, the organisms or the bacteria which are able to grow in dry conditions. For example, the microbes which are causing the spoilage of the dry food grains in the granaries. The rate of growth of the mesophile comes down immediately if we increase the concentration of the salt, that is NaCl. However, in the case of halophiles, we see that rate of growth keeps on increasing and it reaches an optimum level where we find the bacteria is able to grow. This is called the halophile. However, if they are halotolerant, they can grow or they can resist or they can tolerate a certain concentration of NaCl. After that, the rate of growth falls down in the case of halotolerant bacteria. And in the case of extreme halophile, for example, it is Halobacterium salinarum which is being found, they can resist a salinity of a very high concentration. That means at a very high concentration of NaCl, they are able to grow, they are able to reproduce.
Ma'am, how does the xerophiles maintain their osmolarity?
Actually, xerophiles have got the presence of glycerol in their plasma membrane. And because of this presence of glycerol, they can regulate their osmotic pressure inside the cell. If we grow the bacteria in a saline solution where the concentration of sodium chloride is about 0.85, then we find it causes no damage to the bacterial cell. However, if this bacteria grows in an environment where the concentration of NaCl or sodium chloride increases, we find that there is always a tendency of the water molecules to come out of the cell, and as a result the lysis of the cell occurs. This is the condition which is happening in the case of mesophiles, or the condition which is occurring in the case of non-halophiles. While this is not so in the case of halophiles, because they have presence of certain proteins in their plasma membrane, due to which they do not allow the NaCl to come inside. As a result, they regulate their osmotic pressure. Every microorganism that is growing in an environment, in an open environment, is exposed to different types of electromagnetic radiation. And they can be ionizing radiation or they can be non-ionizing radiation. If I consider the ionizing radiation, then they are gamma rays and X-rays. That means they take out the electrons from the atom. However, the UV rays are the non-ionizing radiation which a bacteria may be exposed to. So, if the bacteria is exposed to UV rays, you have formation of thymine dimers in the single strand of DNA. As a result, the DNA doesn't open up, the replication process does not start. So, we find that there are different physical factors like temperature, oxygen, pH, osmotic condition, which affects the rate of growth of the bacteria. And depending upon these physical factors, we have different categories of the bacteria. Now we are going to learn about the chemical factors, which again decides the rate of growth of the bacteria. Okay. Now coming on to the chemical factors, we have different sources of carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, etc. Now, source of carbon is a very important for the growth of bacteria, because we all know that bacterial cells are basically the one which is based on the skeleton of carbon. So, if we study the sources of carbon, we find that there are two broad categories of bacteria. One is called the autotrophs and the second one is called the heterotrophs. Autotrophs are the one which can utilize carbon dioxide and convert it into organic form of carbon. While the heterotrophs are the one which depend on the autotrophs, because they can utilize the organic form of carbon. They cannot convert the carbon dioxide into organic form of carbon. Now we have a category which is called the photoautotrophs. That means they utilize light as their source of energy. But basically they are autotrophs. That means they can convert the carbon dioxide into an organic form of carbon. While we have photoheterotrophs, that means these are basically heterotrophs. They cannot convert carbon dioxide into organic form of carbon, but they can work in the presence of light. Light is their source of energy. We have chemolithotrophs, which use the inorganic compound like your hydrogen sulfide, sulfur, ammonia, nitrate, hydrogen gas as their energy source. While basically they are autotrophs. That means they can utilize the carbon dioxide and convert it down into an organic form of carbon. These are mainly seen in the chemolithotropic conditions where we have presence of inorganic compound in a huge amount. Then we have another category which is called the chemoorganoheterotrophs. They are basically heterotrophs. That means they convert the organic form of carbon, but they use the chemical energy as their source of energy, or they use the chemicals as their source of energy. So these are the different categories of the microorganism based on their source of carbon. Similarly, the sources of nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, which are very important to form the nucleotides. The nucleotides which are going to form the nucleic acids, the basic framework or the blueprint of any microorganism is also very essential. So, if the sources of nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus is changed, we see that the rate of growth of the bacteria also changes, because there may be one bacteria which is able to utilize ammonia much faster rate considering the bacteria which is able to utilize nitrate. So, the source of nitrogen differs. Then we have the source of trace elemental compounds. These compounds are those which are required by the bacterial cell very essentially, but in a very low concentration, because they act as cofactors. There are many enzymes which are not able to function if this trace element is not present. So the presence of trace element also decides whether the bacteria is able to grow or the bacteria will not grow. So finally we can conclude that if the bacteria has to grow, it should get the favorable condition. And these favorable conditions are decided by the physical factors, by the chemical factors, and also the genetic makeup of the microorganism.